I couldn't wait. Hey, it's Romania Black. Yeah, no, I am finally to the point where I can catch up on Tsurune, and I'm doing it. So it's actually funny. It's snowing outside, and so today I actually did not have to go into work because we had a snow day because of the inclement weather. So I thought, you know what? I think it's a sign. I'm at home. I am at home. I don't have to work today. The new episode of Tsurune comes out. I need to catch up. So I was really excited yesterday. I actually watched episode 3 yesterday and was really, really happy that I could catch up to this point. And so, yeah, we're finally here. Minato, my dude, he's a teenage boy. He's just now gotten past to the point where he's developed camaraderie with his team, and now he's getting greedy and he wants things for himself. But I was thinking about it, and we talked a little bit about in the reaction for episode 3, but Minato, he wants to make himself better. And rewatching the episode, he's like, I want to get better than Nikaido, better than Shu. I want to keep shooting and make myself better. And that's a great goal to have. It's nice that you want to improve yourself to where you can be as good as you think your fellow competitors are. But Minato is doing it at the point where he's forsaking his team and forgetting about being there for his team members, and he's only thinking of himself. He's being selfish. And Minato, bless his heart, he's such a cinnamon bun that you're like, he just doesn't realize it's happening. And so Masaki's like, you need to take a step back, reevaluate some things, and then figure it out, right? Masaki's like, you figured out what the point of being the Ochi was. Now you need to figure out the whole thing about teamwork. And the thing of it that we noted in the last reaction is that everybody's kind of falling apart. Like, Kaito and Nanao have their own stuff that they're dealing with. Ryohei's keeping secrets and he has stuff he's dealing with. Seiya has been quiet, but now with Nikaido, he has stuff he's dealing with. I love the idea that we said in the Discord that Seiya and Shu have no time for bullshitters. And that's the thing with Nikaido. Nikaido, he's very hard to read because he seems like he's putting on a fake smile for Minato because he wants him to be in the harem, but then, like, on a dime, right before they go into the round, he like turns and becomes like serious alpha dog and is like, hey, do this, this, and this. So it's like, what is the real Nikaido? Does Nikaido even know? Or is he playing games and knows Minato is a sweet cinnamon bun and will go along with it, whereas Shu and Seiya have kind of solved through the BS and they're like, we're not about you. And what do we do with that? And then why did he do it in front of Masa and the others? I guess to prove a point that Minato wouldn't notice. So Minato has very rose-colored glasses on when it comes to Nikaido, and he wants to be like him, and Seiya and Shu are just kind of like, hey. But what I like about it is Shu is so distant anyway that he's not gonna, I feel, push up against Minato about this. And Seiya has learned, he's like, I'm gonna keep my distance and you'll figure it out. Like, Seiya, I think they have faith in Minato that he'll figure things out. It just sucks now because Minato doesn't know what to do. So yeah, every sports anime goes through a period where its main character goes through a rut and doesn't know what to do. And this is Minato's time. Like, it's not anything that he has to do physically at this point. It's mentally getting back with the team. And we know he's going to come out stronger for it. It's just this part of the story always makes me nervous, and I always am like, I hate how angsty it gets. But so far, Tsurune hasn't been too angsty, so we'll see. But I pour myself a cup of coffee, and I'm like, I'm ready to see what this episode dishes out, and just roll with it. So, all right, I'm ready, y'all. I hope you all are too. But we're gonna start episode 4 of Tsurune season 2. And we're going to do that here in 3, 2, 1, and let's go. Ha. In true Kiwani Tsurune fashion, in the same accord as Free, I love sports anime that's like, you know what? We're not going to drag this BS out. And this episode did not, because I was afraid going into this that Minato's big thing was going to be like a 2 to 3 episode adventure that was going to be such a mess. But no, Minato figures it out finally this episode, what's going on. Thanks to Seiya, thanks to Shu, thanks to Masa, thanks to his harem. They help him find his problem out. And now that gives me hope that next episode, Minato will be able to go back to the team and be like, hey, my bad. I'm here to help fix this. But we have stuff going on with the entire team itself. It's not just Minato that's dealing with things. Kaito is dealing with a lot. And Nanao is dealing with a bit. And Ryohei and Seiya kind of sat out a little bit on the sidelines this episode. But there's a lot going on. And Nikaido, well, we got answers. Things are making a lot more sense. And that's why I wanted to bring Whiteboard Kun out. Because, oh my gosh. This is why I wanted to bring Whiteboard Kun out, because now I feel like, okay, we're getting a much more clear portrait of Nikaido. And I'm like, okay, his character is making a lot more sense, right? But we need to go through this episode because there was quite a bit that was good in it. The girls were damn savage. I was like, I'm all about the girls in this episode for a number of reasons. I was like, oh Hanagawa, girl, Yuna, I'm all here for it, right? And so I do like the coaching dynamic of Tommy Sensei and Misaki, because Misaki is still in his early 20s, right? He's still a very young coach. He's in his early 20s, and he still has kind of like some development of himself to go through as a coach. And Tommy Sensei's been around the block. And so whenever Naramiya starts to kind of backtalk the whole, like, why is this happening to me? You could tell Masaki's kind of upset, and he's like, I'm about to like school Minato on why he does this episode. But Tommy Sensei's like, no, hold on. Let's clear the piece. No, everybody has stuff they need to work on. The stuff you need to work on, Naramiya, just involves you not being on the field. So it's not singling you out. You're just the only one that needs to take a break from the field to work on something else. And I love that you can tell he's frustrated, but Tommy Sensei is like, he's just this force, right? You will not talk back to Tommy Sensei. He's not going to have it, right? And he's just like, this is what you need to do. He's like, you all have areas you need to work on. So this isn't just singling one person out. You've got to take the time and figure out, where did we go wrong? What's the issue? He's like, don't grow impatient. This is all to get better for nationals. Right? And meanwhile, the girls are like, we're fine. The girls are like, we did great. I don't know what you're expecting from us. So yeah, I don't want to go past this OP. We meet, Nikaido's sensei, or his teacher, relative, what have you. We don't know his family situation yet. So I just like that everything in this episode is gloomy and overcast for the most part, right? It's very atmospheric. It's very much tying to how everyone's feeling this episode. We're all like at a point where we need to figure out what to do. And we only have 13 episodes this season. So I like that this was the angst episode for now, right? For now. This was our angsty, Minato has a problem, we're going to fix it episode, and they're not going to drag it out. Because, 2 episodes from now we'll be at the halfway point. So, which I feel like, just theorizing, we're not near nationals. I feel like we have next episode, maybe at the halfway point before we start nationals, but I don't know, right? I feel like maybe we'll have like episode 6 will be where we go to nationals, and then episode 7 and 8 will focus on like the prelims, but then you have 9, 10, you have a lot of episodes left. I don't know how they're going to pace this season, honestly, because nationals are coming up. I don't know how they're going to pace it, or if there's going to be like episodes in between. I don't know what we'll do. That's kind of cool. If it's nationals, maybe there's like a day of competition for just like the preliminaries, and then a day of competition for like the quarterfinals, the semifinals. Maybe that's how we'll do it. We'll just break it up piece by piece, right? That's hard to predict, right? Because so far, the whole half a season's been nationals itself, or the prelim rounds. So that's interesting. I don't know how they're going to do that. But yeah, Minato is just, he can't think of what to do. And this all goes back to what Masa tells him, that with Minato, at the start of this, his focus is on trying to imitate and be Shu or Nikaido, and thus he loses sight of himself and his team. He's so focused on being like them, he's losing sight of himself and his team, and that causes everything to kind of fall apart in the framework of everything. I will say this. We'll say this. This teacher, I'm in my 30s. This teacher here, he's not bad with the suspenders. What a geeky teacher. I'm kind of here for it. he just seems like a little bit of an if you're into older men, you can see it. Kiwanis like, we're going to make even the old English teachers attractive in this series. But what I love about this part here is that Seiya just has this look on his face where, Seiya's just like, he understands that Narumia is just lost and kind of distracted. But Seiya, to his credit, and this is kind of true of Seiya's character, we'll go put Seiya up here. Seiya does things behind the scenes. Behind the scenes help. Right? Because Seiya is one of those characters where he's tried to be like at the forefront with Minato, and Minato's pushed back. And Seiya's like, you know what? I'm just not going to do it. Seiya's like, I'm not going to push you, Minato. I'm just going to behind the scenes get stuff ready. When you're ready to come to me for help, I'll be here for you. But I'm not going to push it. The only time he actually does kind of push it is when he tries to give him notes from the class, being a good guy. And Narumi is just not, he's just so distracted. He's not paying attention. I will say, does Seiya sound different this season to anybody else? I'm assuming he has the same voice actor. His voice just sounds, I don't know if it's different or maybe since I've watched the English dub, it's thrown me off. I need to go back and listen to Seiya in season 1. He sounds a little different and I can't put my finger on it. Maybe it's the English dub throwing me off. But Minato spends a big portion of this episode distracted and off. He is restless. He can't focus, right? And it's so like palpable. Like Kiwani does a really good job of just like animating that restless energy. And it's just so like, it makes me want to like just grab him and shake him and be like, stop it. Right? You can definitely tell what it is. And he just doesn't get it for the longest time in this episode. And Seiya says that he's like, I don't get along with Masa. He's like, you know this. But he says that he knows that Masa has the team's interest in mind. He's like, I don't agree with a lot of things Masaki says and does, but I know that he's doing it for the better of the team, and he's what our club needs right now. So he's like, I'm fine with it because I know it's for the best. So he's like, I'll put up with it because I know that it's something good for us. And he's like, he's taking a high-handed approach. But there's a rhyme and reason to it all. And he's animated a little different too. I like it, but Seiya just seems a little different. Maybe he's more expressive in this. So there's Kotoha, and July. And it looks like a bunch of girls that are doing Kyudo. And they're like a public Kyudo tournament in the summer. And they're groups of 3 for teams of 3. So, okay. So we have off to the side here. Just going to make little notes that might come up later in the season. Just for the record. Seiya is okay with Masa for now. There's a rhyme and reason. And then there is this July public tourney for with 3-person teams. I mean, what if Minato, Shu, and Nikaido formed a team and did that tournament? That'd be pretty awesome, right? I'd be like, okay, cool. And then you have Kaito, then you'd have somebody would be left out because you have Kaito, Ryohei, Nanao, and Seiya. But the girls, I figure the girls are going to do this tournament, but it would be hilarious if Shu, Seiya, and Minato entered, or if along with Ryohei, Nanao, and Kaito, and they all decide to enter together. Or maybe it's Seiya, Kaito, and Nanao, and Ryohei, Shu, and Minato enter together. I don't know. I feel like the fact that they bring up this 3-person team and the girls could enter it is maybe going to come up later. Maybe later. I feel like that's going to be a plot point. I would like it if the girls had more to do in this episode. They do play a part in this episode in more ways than one. I like that we're seeing more and more of them. That's good. But I really hope that we get to see them actually do more shooting in this series. I think if there's been one complaint about Tsurune, it's been that the girls don't have much to do. So, which they're perfect. What can we do? So, I hope we get more with them. But man, when Seiya comes up and says Hanazawa-san, it's also weird that we know her as Yuna, but they call her Hanazawa because they're not on a first name basis. And they're like, I need to talk to you. And I like that Yuna's like, she's getting all the attention this episode. She's like, why are you guys bothering me? I just love it. She's like, okay. When we go back to that scene, that was amazing, that moment. But Kaito practicing himself and realizing, thinking, what is off? But my thing with Kaito, we'll put him here. My thing with Kaito is that he's in his own head so much that he realizes when he's doing the shooting here, he realizes that he's fine. Like when he had his tempo fine, that it was Minato that was throwing him off, but he doesn't want to blame others. He would rather take the charge himself. And that's an interesting character development for Kaito, because in the first season, he strikes you as a tsundere character that's kind of like gruff and tries to put on this show, but is a secret softie. And that is the case. But in this season, he's much softer right off the bat because we know him better. But this kind of self-sacrificial aspect of him is something I didn't think we would get. And he is. He would rather take the blame himself because he thinks he can handle it when the reality is he can't. And rather than put blame on someone else when maybe that needs to be the case. Because this was kind of Minato's fault because Minato was not thinking of the team and it was throwing everybody off. But Kaito doesn't want to put blame on someone else. And that's very admirable. And Nanao kind of calls him out about it, saying like, you need to talk. You need to communicate to people. But Kaito also, he needs to talk more. He needs to communicate more with his team, because even like him going to the range by himself, it's by himself. He's not telling anybody what he's doing or why he's doing it. He's just kind of wrapped up in his own head, and sometimes it's easy to get lost when you do that. And even Ryohei notices, but Ryohei is so respectful that he doesn't want to call out the fact that Kaito went off by himself. He's like, well, he must have a reason that he's doing this, so he goes back and tells Nanao about it in art class. Granted, these guys are pretty good in art. I thought about minoring in it for a hot second. Nanao is amazing. Nanao is like doing a damn Renaissance painting over there. And Ryohei's isn't that bad either. I like this instructor's like trying to give him advice. I'm like, dude, he's doing a pretty dang good job. But okay. And so Ryohei asks if art and Kyudo have anything in common, which, it is an art form, literally. And they kind of muse about it while they're working on these pictures, and they talk about how beautiful shots land, but shots that land are beautiful. So it's kind of like, is it apples and oranges? What came first, chicken or the egg? Does it matter? And Ryohei's like, do you think that Tsujimine's shots are beautiful? And it's like, Nanao's like, well, they land, so maybe they are in their own way. It's like, I would say that they are beautiful shots. They're just unique. Right? Beauty's in the eye of the beholder, right? And that's kind of what Nanao says. He's like, well, I don't know if they're beautiful necessarily, but they land, so they have to be good, right? It seems rather subjective, but the objective part is if they land, they're good. So there's that. And Ryohei, he gets too much shading. Ryohei similarly gets kind of in his own head too. So I'm gonna put that on here. That Ryohei, put him up here. Ryohei can overthink, just like Kaito, right? He can overthink like Kaito and then kind of get more confused than he needs to be. And so I was really expecting Nanao to tell Kaito that he heard from Ryohei about him being on the range, but he doesn't. Instead, what's interesting is he says, I think you'd be better off if you talked more too, though. And Kaito's like, if I said what? And he's like, lots of stuff. So Nanao, we'll bring up Nanao. Nanao wants Kaito to open up. He's like, we're a team. We're all bros. We've been, through a lot together. You need to talk more. You don't need to hold it in. You need to communicate and don't bury yourself in your problems because you're just getting caught up in it. It's not helping anybody. It's making things worse. So he's like, you need to communicate. And I love Minato tries to go for the bow, and Moss is like, what did I tell you? Like, just no. He's like, absolutely not. He's like, I just got done telling you not to do that. And he sends him to work with the hand exercises. I love the girls taking a picture of him. It's absolutely great when they're like, like the girls are savage and they're wonderful. That whole conversation with Seiya and Minato later, oh, I'm so here for it. But we have the overcast skies, and then we go to Tsujimine Prefectural High School. Here's the thing. Tsujimine does not look wealthy. It is definitely not Kirisaki. It is definitely not Kazemai. It looks like, it says prefectural school, but it looks kind of like a very rural public school. It does not, like, it looks very sparse is what I'm seeing, right? It looks rather sparse. But we're going to put Nikaido over here, because we find out a whole lot about his character. Quite a bit. But yeah, it's a very sparse looking school. And so they have like a baseball team. And he's like, I want to hear you call them out. They have a baseball team. But then we go to this range. They don't have a dojo. And there's lots of little symbolic things that you can tell about this. Like, one, this looks like the shack where their stuff is looks like a dugout. It looks like an abandoned baseball field. Like they got a new baseball field and this was the old one. They're using these ripped and torn umbrellas as their shade. So if you look, there's a chain link fence that's run down. There's weeds and stuff all over it. So it's not very well maintained. So they have this rundown range. I love everything about this. They have like the plywood set up with their like homemade arrows. And it looks like desks and lockers that they've like scooted over there to make the range. And there's like chairs and stuff just everywhere. It's just very handy made. Yeah, they're just mats and stuff. It is a homemade archery range. And it's a little greenhouse that their stuff's in. And there's just the 5 of them. That's all that's on their team. The moment I saw this, I was like, oh, this is what we're doing. They're like they're the homemade, like the little Lost Boys archery team, right? And their uniforms kind of look like Kirisaki's. Almost like their uniforms they're wearing don't match even. So they kind of look like Kirisaki uniforms that they just borrowed or got from somewhere else. That's what it looks like. And which is probably the case because they don't seem like they have their own team uniforms. And then Nikaido's sitting there on his phone saying it's not all about your arms. You want to pay attention to your trunk and your abs. Focus on your lower back. Like, and Fuwa is the one with the purple hair and the pink streaks. He is very apt to listening to Nikaido. Fuwa, we'll talk about this. We've got our crew here out the side. Fuwa is the most apt to listen to Nikaido. He seems like the one that takes him the most seriously, right? And meanwhile, I like the one guy is just like doing the extras, the crunches. Higuchi, we'll put Higuchi. He's the one that has the fluffy hair, the Justin Bieber hair. Higuchi is kind of just quiet, but observant because he notes that it might rain, right? He's like, do you think it's going to rain? And then the one guy looks up. He's like, we won't be able to practice if it does. And the one guy says, I'll do muscle training instead. And so then we have our Joe and Cherry comparison. The one guy's like Kojiro from Skate. And the guy with the mask is like Cherry from Skate, where he's like, there's no beauty in bulk. And he's like, mine is right. I'm like, okay, do you guys have a skateboard out back that you guys are going to do competitions for here in a second? Because that's what's reminding me of. He's like so bulky. And then Odaguro. I love him. Because Higuchi's like, why don't you join judo or wrestling? Because your body's kind of suited for that. And he says that he loves the beauty of Kyudo. He reminds me of Toto from Jujutsu Kaisen, where he's like, you wouldn't understand. Like I feel like Odaguro and Sase would be like friends, right? Like you don't understand the beauty and complexity of Kyudo. He's like, I like the beauty of it. Like I like Odaguro. He's fun, right? And so Captain Aragaki, I like that, interestingly enough, we have Captain Aragaki. I feel like he's a 3rd year. Why would Nikaido make him captain unless he's a 3rd year, right? And so maybe he was a founding member. I feel like Odaguro, if anybody's 3rd years in this lineup, I feel like Odaguro and Well, he said, but then in last episode he said Higuchi Sensei or Higuchi Senpai. So I'm guessing that he is a third year. I'm guessing that Aragaki is a third year because they seem to know each other. We don't know about Odaguro or Fuwa. So I think Higuchi and Aragaki might be the only third years that are on the team. Maybe. But none of them are first years. They're all second or third. Okay. So you should push your bow hand out more. And then he's taking I don't know if that's an animation error or, well, no, he took the mask off to shoot before. So during the tournaments, maybe he keeps it on except when he's shooting. That's not doing anything for you, but you do you if you want to keep that mask on. He's like, you'll be more stable. And he says, push from where? And the thing about Nikaido is that he's a good teacher, right? Nikaido is a good teacher. We'll put him on here. He's good at teaching. And he does like to help others, right? Because Minato did say that earlier on. He's like, oh, he was always helping us do things. Nikaido seems like the type of person that he has that personality where he wants to help others. And he wants to help show people how to do things, right? But we'll talk about this with it makes more sense with his sensei why he doesn't want him to coach. That part makes sense. But I just think Aragaki's very handsome. He has a very pretty face. And he's like, good point. He's like, now I get it. He's Nikaido. So I like that Odaguro says he's looking to get a shooting glove, but he asked if he should wait till after nationals. He said it feels like the glove he does have is hitting his middle finger. And Nikaido's like, I don't know. Let me ask. And so they say the guy who's the real brains around here, like this mysterious benefactor, why don't they just become our coach? And Nikaido smiles at that moment when he says, why doesn't he become my coach? I feel like when Nikaido smiles like that, it's two-faced. He's not smiling because he's happy. He's smiling like as a defense mechanism to be like, no, he's sick and possibly dying. He cannot come and coach for us. He's like, don't you think this sort of freedom is better? So he says that he wants to have freedom as a team. Which, that makes a lot of sense coming from Kirisaki, because Kirisaki, even though they kind of celebrate Kyudo and they're really good, and they seem like they have a lot of individualism, whereas they let Manji decide not to be on the team. They didn't push him. They let him do his own thing. But they are a very rigid, consistent, structured team, and that doesn't seem like it's Nikaido's style. So I could see Nikaido being on Kirisaki and them telling him to give up the shaman form of Kyudo and him saying no, and then that being a problem and him leaving. So he wants to have freedom as a team, but the sensei, we'll get his name here in a minute, he can't coach because he's sick. We'll talk about that. He says, why add someone in to boss us around? And then we cut straight to Masa. So that's fascinating that we cut straight to Masa from... It almost seems like I'm going to be waiting for Nikaido and Masaki to have a conversation. Because it seems like it's setting that up. It seems like Masaki is being set up to have a conversation with Nikaido at some point. I don't know what that's going to entail or what it's going to be like, but it just feels like the show is setting that up and wants us to have that happen. So, speaking of Masaki... we talk about Nikaido being like, oh, we have the freedom to do whatever we want, even though he's giving, advice to the team. Masaki is kind of, you could tell he's a little aggravated with Minato, right? That Minato's not figured it out. And he kind of gets onto Minato a wee bit. He, starts giving him all these things to do. Like, your left wrist is bending that way. You're going to hurt it. He's like, you're pulling your shoulders back too far. He's like, you pull him to the left instead. And Minato's like, could you not list so much at once? And Masaki's like, there's a lot you need to fix. He's like, until you realize that you're out on the range. And Kaito looks at him, and you could tell that Kaito can tell that Minato doesn't get it. And Kaito doesn't want Minato... I don't know. It's so fascinating because it's almost like Kaito doesn't want Minato to get in trouble. Like, he feels bad that Minato's getting yelled at. He thinks it's his fault and that he should get reprimanded. And it's like, no. But I like that Misaki tells him that he has a lot to fix. Even though he did good. He's like, yeah, you did good. Got a lot to fix. Get on that. It's like, ugh, right? It's like, you've got a lot you can work on. And so Nikaido says basically, we go back to them, he says basically Kyudo boils down to just landing hits. He's like, that's all we have to do. That's it. He's like, unless you've got something else. So Nikaido's philosophy is that we just land hits. He's like, and that makes, it's like the teamwork aspect is kind of thrown out. So that makes sense of how they compete. They all kind of do their own thing, but they have their own tempo rhythm and they practice like that. So that's all they know. So they really, the tempo being off isn't something that affects them because it's something they're used to. So it just affects everybody else because they're like, what is this? But yeah, he's like, unless you got something else, Fua. And he's like, no talk about etiquette or positioning or whatever means much if you can't land a hit. So yeah, he's like all that fancy talk about form and structure and etiquette. If you can't land your shots, it doesn't mean anything. Which sounds like a personal thing that he's had to deal with, right? And Aragaki seems to take it to heart. But Fua says, well, Kirisaki lands plenty of hits, so there must be something to what they're doing. And that look, that just grumble badger face that Nikaido makes, he's like, we don't talk about Kirisaki. He clearly has had a bad experience with them at some point. In the flashback with Minato earlier, it didn't seem like he was having a bad experience, but something happened that he didn't like, and he was like, okay, bye. And we don't know that yet. And he says, well, that's because 3 of their 5 are hardly even human. Meaning Motomura, Sase, and Fujiwara. But they are, like, he's very jealous. He feels like he's jealous. Jealous of Kirisaki. Especially the teammates that he had. Yeah, he doesn't want to acknowledge that they're human, which they are. We've seen them miss shots before. And yeah, Fua calls out the 3 that he's talking about. And then I like that Odagura's like, well, they aren't that far ahead of us though, right? He's basically a buffed up Ryohei. It's actually funny. And Arasaki's like, yeah, they only came in second at the prefectures after all. I don't know. I said in the last reaction that Higuchi reminded me of Nanao and Aragaki reminded me of like the polar opposite of Kaito. He kind of does, but if you told me he seems more like Seiya, I could see that too. And if you told me that Fua was more like Kaito, I could see that as well. It's interesting. And then Fua's like, well, Kazemai won that one, right? And Higuchi's like, well, there wasn't anything impressive about them. Nothing at all. And Nikaido doesn't have anything bad to say about Kazemai. His phone goes off before then. He doesn't have anything to say. Now it shows there that Shigeyuki-san. So Shigeyuki. Which Yuki means snow, right? So interesting. Shigeyuki-san. He it says he called, but he answers it like a text message. So I'm like, how do you do this, sir? And he tells him that he should break in the glove instead of just swapping it out. And that's when they notice that it's about to rain. And they have to grab all their gear and pack it in. They just have all these arrows that are all hodgepodged and a busted umbrella that they're sitting under. And they have these bamboo mats they've used along with the different targets. And Fua seems the closest to Nikaido. Fua, our boy with the pink highlights, he seems the closest one to Nikaido, or the one that's following him the most, right? And he's like, I wish we had a dojo. It's times like these, I wish we had our own dojo to shoot at. And Nikaido says, we don't need one. We don't want to owe anyone anything. So he says, we don't need a dojo, and we don't want to owe anything. Okay, Dingy. And this mentality here, I say Gen Z. I'm a full-blown millennial. I have no right to talk, but I have a lot of students that would be of the same age range, close to the age range that Nikaido is. And it does feel kind of like a generational thing a little bit, where I have a lot of students that they, I could give them help or resources, but they don't want to ask because they're like, oh, I don't want to be a burden. I don't want to owe anything. I don't want to be a burden. I can figure out myself. And that is a fine mentality to have. There's nothing wrong with that. But it sucks when there's a resource possibly right in front of you that would make your life easier if you just take it. And I don't know. When I was their age in this show, I was like asking questions and asking for help, and I didn't have a problem with it. But I've noticed like a lot of my students are like, oh, we don't want to do that. We don't want to be a burden. I'm like, please be a burden because we would like to help you. So I don't know what that is. It's very interesting, but I know the type of person. I've had students that are like Nikaido. They're like, I'm like, I could give you this help. And they're like, oh, no, we don't want that. So it's fascinating, right? But he's like, we don't want to owe anyone anything. So that leads me to believe, like, what has made Nikaido think that way? Why does he not want to go to... Because I'm sure he could find a dojo. I'm sure there'd be one around. Unless, maybe he tried to find one and he was asked to pay them back. Or maybe he doesn't have the money to get something. Or maybe the school doesn't... There's some reason why he said he doesn't want to owe anything. And why he doesn't want to reach out and ask for help. There's a reason for it. We just don't have it yet. And I feel like we're going to get it this season. But Nikaido's character becomes so much more engaging. And Fu was like, even the school, come on, man. He's like, I like what we've got here. He doesn't want structure. He wants to be somewhat in control of what he's got, right? He wants to have control without the structure. Right? Because, Fu was like, we could ask the school for something. And he's like, no, because that would come with rules and regulations. And he doesn't want to do that. He's a free spirit, damn it. Nikaido, he's like, we're going to make it to the top without a dojo or a coach. Which, that's admirable that you want to do it and say you did it without a coach or a dojo. But you're really not helping yourself any. You're just making your task. It's almost like he has a mountain of snow in front of him. And here's a snow shovel that would help, but he's like, I don't need that. I'll just use my hands. And it's like, yeah, you can do that. That's cool, but that work smarter, not harder. I don't know, but we don't know his circumstance, right? The stuff with Shigeyuki makes so much more sense, though. So that part there we'll talk about. But the whole idea of not trying to find a dojo or a sponsor or anyone to help, I feel like you're just shooting yourself in the foot. You could be so much better, but... maybe he'll find that out along the way. And Higuchi and the others, Higuchi and Aragaki, sound like they don't want help either. And Odaguro's okay. And God, you know what? Fuwa's pretty attractive. There's some shots of Fuwa that I'm like, your hair is ridiculous, but Kyoani animates you really well, sir. All right, with your honey eyes. Like, he's like, sounds fun. Yeah, it does sound fun, but it's like... you could be so much better. But, okay. Whatevs. And Nikaido, you can tell he likes this group because they all kind of feel the same way as him. And so then Minato goes in, and it's been 3 days. 3 days that he's been out practicing. And so, Seiya, I feel like Seiya is very intentional with what he does here. He talks about recording shots. Recording shots to look at themselves. And I feel like Seiya got the footage and realized that Minato needs to see himself shooting to understand what the problem is. But Seiya's like, I'm not going to come out and tell you because I know how that's going to go. You're not going to like it and it'll just be a problem. So I'll let you figure it out. We'll shoot ourselves and maybe the gears will turn in your head and click into place. Right? And here's the thing. I've done competitive speech. We have had to in the past what's funny is we have had to, in the past, record ourselves speaking. And honestly, it's about as embarrassing as you think it is, because you think that you sound a certain way, and you think that you gesture a certain way, and when you're up there speaking, you think that everything looks fine, and then when you watch yourself speak, you're just like, oh, this sounds awful. Like, I think I sound awful on tape giving a speech. I'm like, because you have a certain voice. You're not necessarily yourself. But it's funny because they're watching themselves on screen, and they're like, oh, this doesn't even look like me. And I know that feeling. Like, that's so relatable. I'm like, yes, that's exactly the emotion that you get. And I like that the girls are like, the guys are like, we don't want to watch this footage. We want to do this. And the girls are like, well, aren't we supposed to be getting better? So we probably need to see what the issue is. And Kaito, I love his, like, his gestures where he's sitting there watching. And I love that his foot just keeps tapping. Like, he wants to say something so badly, but he can't hold it in. He's like, we know what the problem is. And then he blames himself and says he threw it off. And Masaki's like, I want to hear what you think, Kaito. And everybody's looking at him, and Masaki's like, go ahead, talk, Kaito, because you talking will maybe allow everybody else in the room to connect the dots, which they do. Kaito blames himself. And I like that when Masaki asks Kaito to keep talking, Seiya looks back to Minato, being like, are you gonna connect the dots and realize that Kaito was off because you were off? And that's exactly what happens. He says, I'm not holding back. That's all it was. And Nanao's like, and Nanao says, you just got thrown off your rhythm. And that's when Kaito looks over to Minato. Like, that's when it all clicks, right? Because Kaito's like, it was me. I was just off. And now, I feel like Nanao and Seiya figured out a long time ago that it was Minato, but they didn't want to say anything. So Nanao's like, you were off. Why was that? Why was your rhythm off? And then Kaito looks over to Seiya, looks over to Minato, and Minato realizes it was me. And Kaito's like, no, it wasn't you. He's like, it was my fault up front, but that wasn't it. And Minato's like, no, it was me. So this whole scene of them at the train station, beautiful. Like, the Kyoani, they spent like 5 weeks animating a vending machine, and I'm here for it. And he tells Nanao, quit stirring up trouble. And Nanao's like, how was I stirring up trouble? I love this. I love that he tells Nanao to not stir up trouble. Don't you do that, right? He says, how was I? And he says, I don't like how you won't just come out and say it. He's like, you don't talk enough and you need to talk more. And he's like, it's not Minato's fault. And I like that Nanao is like, look, don't let your pride get in the way of fixing things. It's okay to admit that there was more than one factor. It wasn't just you. And I like that Nanao gets a little agitated at him. I like Nanao gets a little attitude, being like, okay, I'm done. Like we're old enough. Let's talk about this. This whole train scene's great. I love the two of them side by side as the train comes up. And then he's like, you try to take too much on yourself. He's like, I bet you don't even see how it ends up making things worse for the rest of us. Because, yeah, Kaito getting in his own head and taking this all on his own and not talking about it, it just causes things to bubble, and then it gets the others concerned about him, but he doesn't realize because he's stuck in his own head. So now it's like, you not talking to us is more damaging than you think. And Kaito's like, well, what do you even know about me? And Nanao says, everything. He's like, you're the one who doesn't. And he just pushes him back off the train. Like, just bumps him down. And that's it. So yeah, Nanao says that Kaito is the one who doesn't know himself. I'm glad we're getting to this because I feel like Nanao has spent so much of season 1 defending Kaito, and he's defended him his whole life, and he's had to know everything about him so that he could come up with excuses and defend him from other people's criticisms. And now he's like, you need to take an introspective look so that you can take care of these problems and I don't have to fix them for you anymore. But man, everybody's just giving Nanao all of the advice. But this scene here is so relatable, where he's doing the vacuuming and the air comes out and knocks like his dad's trying to do like his taxes or trying to balance his checkbook, and like the receipts get blown away. And then if I had a nickel every time I've stubbed my toe like Nanao did, I'd be pretty wealthy. But yeah, it happens all the time. I'm like, I feel you, man. And the dad nearly trips over the cord, knocks the coffee cup over. Luckily, it doesn't look like it hurt the laptop. And then everything's okay. But like the dad's like, sorry, man, do you need to see a doctor? He says, no. I like that Nanao's parents kind of look similar. And Nanao has definitely his dad's hairline, but he looks like, he looks similar to his dad a lot. And then he's like, everything just feels off. He's like, everything, I feel like I'm thrown off today. And I've had those days too, where like one bad thing happens right after another, and you feel like you can't catch a break, right? But the dad's right. Usually in those situations, he's like, why do things get thrown off? And the dad doesn't necessarily answer why things get thrown off altogether. But in this case, he's like, I landed my hits. I did what I need to do for my team. Why am I the one getting told off? Why am I getting pulled off the range? I don't get it. And I like the dad's like, I like that the dad, some parents take the side of the kid and they're like, well, there's nothing wrong with you, my child. It's everyone around you that's wrong. No, this dad's pretty realistic. He's like, look, if you're the one getting pulled off, the problem's not everybody else. It's probably you. Like, he's just like, it's probably you that's the issue. Just saying. He's like, the problem isn't with them, but it's you. He's like, sometimes when you're sure you're doing things right, you lose sight of yourself in the process. And Minato's like, what am I losing sight of? And I like it's Shu at first. She was like, something's off about you in the third round. And it suddenly clicks. He's like, oh, I need to go get something. So he knows where Yuna lives, which is a fun time. I love this scene so much. Because he's like, Hanazawa-san, like he calls into her apartment and he's like, it's me, Naramiya. And she's like, what? She's like, why are you here? I like that she slowly opens the door like, why are you here at my apartment? And he doesn't exactly say. He doesn't tell her till he comes up. Oh my God, I bet going through her head is like, she's like, I don't want to date him because Seiya likes him. She's like, Seiya will kill me if I date him. What I love about this scene is that Yuna has zero interest in Minato at all. And then she is, you will not convince me she's not thoroughly convinced that Seiya likes Minato. And that's why she's like, oh God, no. I don't want Seiya to be on my tail. But she like barely opens up the door. I like that she has a shirt that says Home Sweet Home on it and the pink Crocs. And he's like, can you show me regional footage? And she just stares at him like, you came to my house? You don't want to see my room? Like Minato's not embarrassed to be at a girl's house or anything like shonen protagonists be damned. Like any other shonen protagonist would be like, I'm at a girl's house, oh my gosh, and clutch his imaginary pearls. And Minato here is just like, I need the regional footage. Can you help me? And she's like, oh my God, you guys are idiots. I freaking love this scene. She just loses it. She's like, pfft. He's like, why? And she's like, talk to the captain. I gave him the footage. And he's like, why? She's like, what do you mean why? How can you not know? And then we cut back to Seiya where he's like, I need to ask a favor. And he's like, you recorded the matches at regionals, right? He's like, can I get a copy of that footage? And I love that Yuna says, oh, you mean footage of Naramiya? Oh, I mean footage of everyone. of the team, right? The girls are on it. They know. They know. They know about it. I love he's like, yes. And she's like, you got it. Which I'm sure, shipping aside, she knew that Seiya was going to show Minato the footage of himself to try to show him what the problem was. It's just the way she phrases it and the way that scene handles is so like a romantic BL. It just, my brain can't handle it. It was just, that was too good. And then Seiya, looking at the footage, Narumi just waltzes into his room like, hey, what's up? Sorry, just had to run over here. Like, he's clutching his side where he's like ran back. He's biked all the way back. He's like, I need to see the videos. And Seiya's like, yeah, she texted me on the way here. Get over here. And so he watches everything to see what's going on. Meanwhile, we cut to Kaito, and he has a big sister. He has a big sister. I love her. I love her already. She just throws his laundry at him. Best girl. I love her already. She has a very Yayoi vibe from Given. She feels like Uenoyama's sister. She has that same vibe where she's just like, here's your stuff. Take care of it. She's like, is our young little master all alone today? I love her. She's great. And he's like, you're not hanging out with Now? I like she says now instead of Nanao. And he's like, it's not like we hang out every day. She's like, oh, you mean when he always takes you around everywhere? No, surely not. He's like, no, he doesn't. I love her face. She's like, I'm just imagining things then. Very funny. And he like kicks the shirt back at her. But then, yeah, Kaito thinking about it. Of course, as soon as she leaves, Kaito's like, did I goof? I really want Nanao here. And he thinks back to them as kids. And we see like the little flashback of him saying, Kachan, come on. We're going to lose our spot. And like grabbing his hand and leading him on to like the playground. And then we get to see inside of his head. He's like, Minato's finished the shot already. I gotta hurry. Everybody's waiting on me. Like, his whole tempo is thrown off. I love that we see this from two different perspectives. We see this from Kaito's perspective first, and then we cut back to Minato seeing it, and then seeing the other side of Kaito, because Kaito hears Minato's shot at first, and it's like, oh, I gotta hurry up. Everybody's waiting on me. And when you first watch this scene, you're like, well, Kaito, no, it's fine. Take your time. Like, what's up? What are you doing? But then we cut back to Minato watching. And he's like, oh, his draw's too fast. It's putting too much strength into it. What's his problem? And then he asks to see his own shot. And he's so distracted thinking about Nikaido and Shu and making himself better. He's so distracted that he has no form. And he's taking way too long. And it's throwing Kaito off. Because Kaito's sitting there waiting, being like, what's taking so long, Minato? Come on. And so seeing both of them in this moment having the same thoughts, it's great. It's great. And then we cut back to Minato realizing that, what did he do? And he's just like, okay. And Seiya tries to like say, you know, what the video means. He's not in Minato's head to know. He's like trying to summarize through it. And he tries to tell Minato it's the stress of the tournament. But Minato knows that it's not. He's like, no, it's because I was trying to imitate others and thinking too much about that. He's like, I said enough. And the one part I hate about this episode, the one part that does bug me is that Minato says sorry and then leaves to go tell Masa what he thinks he's figured out. But I feel like just saying sorry wasn't enough. I really want Minato to be like, I get what's wrong, and explain it to him. And I feel like maybe next episode he's going to do that, or at least I hope he does that. That's my hope, is that he does admit what's going on. That's the only thing I can hope for, is that he does come back and say, oh yeah, this was my deal. But yeah, I feel like he should bring it up, but you know. So that's my only beef, is I wish he'd talked more with Seiya, but hopefully he gets, you know, that taken care of next episode. And he says, how did I think I was working for the team? I couldn't even see myself out there. And so then we cut back to Nikaido doing the gardening that's in the OP for Shigeyuki-san. And he's sitting there, and it looks like, is that like a dehumidifier or something that's there on the table? Maybe. But he's sitting there reading. And he says, that'll do, Eisuke. Now, I don't think they're related. I don't know. I think he's just a family friend or a sensei that taught him, because in the OP he's younger, right? So we think that he's just his teacher. And Nikaido is there helping him with his garden because he wants to help him take care of stuff, right? I'm sure maybe Nikaido has like a family at home. He's just hanging out with him for the afternoon. and helping him garden and take care of stuff. And so he's like, no, come in and have some coffee, like, every 15-year-old. And then he asks about Kirisaki and Fujiwara. So he clearly has been an archer himself and knows the sensei that taught Fujiwara. So interesting. He's like, I guess I admit he was good. He says he did learn directly under Saionji sensei, so I bet she's proud. And so yeah, we're just having the cake and stuff, and he says, how are your friends? Like your advice always helps, Shigeyuki-san. And he says, I doubt that's enough. And he tells him he should go find a real instructor. Like, I'm getting I'm like, Kiwani, don't you dare make this man die before the tournament. Don't you dare do that. Like, Kiwani, I'm getting bad vibes. I'm like, don't go Violet Evergarden on this. Don't be doing this. I don't like the vibes I'm getting with this. Because he's telling Nikaido he needs to find a teacher. He's like, your team needs someone who can be there to watch over things. And he's like, no, thanks. And now it makes sense, too, because he's had a teacher, Shigeyuki, and knowing that Shigeyuki is sick and potentially won't be there for him, you can tell there's a side of Nikaido that maybe he doesn't want to open up and have someone else be in the same boat. Because, Minato and them had to deal with Misaki being an accident and what that meant, so maybe he doesn't want to gamble and have that feeling overcome him again. I don't know. He says Tsujimine's going to win just the way we are. Just the 5 of us and our shaman Uchiyo Koshi form. And he's like, is that so? Let's see how far you can make it then, eh? Like that line, let's see how far you can make it. It's very much someone saying, you do that. Go for it. Okay, just the 5 of you. Okay. And it almost feels like he's telling Nikaido, he's like, do you really think that? Or are you just being stubborn? Like, Meanwhile, speaking of swallowing pride, because Nikaido doesn't seem to want to do that. Speaking of swallowing pride, that's when Misaki is visited by Naramiya, who has just done nothing but bike all day long. He's just been on his bike all day. He's like, did you put me on my rubber band grip because my form was off? I like Masaki's like, that's what you got out of this? He's like, I told you your form was wrong plenty of times. Is that all? What else? And he's like, I guess you did. I love that Masaki's like, you shouldn't be trying. I love he's just slamming his head around, like a teacher would. He's like, you shouldn't be trying to land hits. The hits should come with the form. He's like, I tell Kaito this all the time. It's like, but you need to stop copying others and find your own shooting form. I just love that he just sits there and rattles his head. And Misaki and Minato's like, I deserve this. It's great. I love that moment. That's so cute. And then he asks Misaki if he's developed his own form. And he says, no, I'm still working on it. But he's like, it's something you take a lifetime to figure out for yourself. But you shouldn't spend all your time trying to imitate others. He's like, don't try to copy what someone else's. Figure out your own stuff. And Minato's like, a lifetime journey? He's like, I want something now. He's like, it could take even longer than that. But that's what your teammates are here for. I like this. He's like, your teammates are here to help you with that. And he basically gets to the heart of the whole issue. He's like, you shoot as a team of 5, so you help the other 4 out and you match yourself with them. You make each other get stronger. That's the whole point. And you help each other figure things out. You can't focus only on yourself. One of you trying hard doesn't help the team. The 5 of you need to work together. It's what we call ikai. He's like, yeah, the way we breathe in and then out when we draw, or how we're supposed to breathe during a full draw. And he's like, yes, that's part of it, but I'm talking on a grander level. And he's like, teamwork. Kyudo's an individual sport, though, isn't it? So he asks him this rhetorical question. He's like, why are you not answering on purpose? He's like, no. He's like, nothing you said is wrong. You just need to realize that. And Minato's like, realize what? He's like, fine, I'll show you. Just wait till I do. I love he just gets so frustrated. He's like, why won't you give me questions? Why won't you give me answers to my questions? So he talks about ikai. And which is the idea of breathing as a team. And I do think that I get what Misaki is saying. He's like, you all are a team and you need to watch out and be there for each other. But in Kyudo, there is an individual aspect of it, right? He says you all are individuals, but you can be individuals and focus on the goal, but don't lose sight of yourself and don't lose sight of your team, right? And that's kind of how speech is too, because when I did competitive speech, we all were on a team. We all had to be there and support each other and communicate with each other and help each other through problems. But at the end of the day, when we compete, we ourselves compete against others. We don't compete as a team. Like, we all do individual events, and then our individual scores come together as a team to form like your placing. But you have to be a team and work together and practice together and get this like rhythm and camaraderie for you to be the best version of yourself. So I think that applies to Kyudo in the same fashion as well, right? But man, Minato just cycling home being like, I got this. I figured it out. I'm going to show Misaki. I don't know exactly what he's talking about, but I know what the issue is, and now we can work on it. So, broken tempo. Yeah, I'm just glad that they all came together and realized... I'm glad that they all came together and realized what was going on, and they're at least trying to work it out. I'm glad that we're at least getting to a point where we're figuring out what the issues are. Good. We're not going to drag this out half a season. Now, we're setting up all kinds of angst with Nikaido. All kinds of angsty things that can happen here. With Kaito, there's all sorts of angsty stuff between him and Nanao I feel like we're going to touch on. But I feel like I'm glad this episode, Minato's stuff, he's got something to work on. He knows what the problem is. He doesn't have all the answers, but Misaki's given him something to work with. Good. And now I feel like the rest of the season, we're going to focus on Ryohei. We're going to focus on Kaito and Nanao. We're going to focus on Nikaido. All this fun stuff. So good. We've got plenty of episodes left, so why not, right? But I hope you all enjoyed this reaction and discussion. I really liked this episode. It was a good one. I'm going to go take some screenshots now, but I hope you all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe, take care, and yeah, I'll be back very soon with episode 5 of Tsurune. Bye.